Hi, folks. This is Dr. Ben Pandit. I just want to welcome you to Psych 322. And also, with this video, with these video series, um, I want to kind of give you a little disclaimer. These videos are just kind of a highlight, I would say, the highlight of your chapter that you're supposed to read for that week. It is not meant to replace your reading, so please continue to read your chapter in your book. I just want to kind of cover a few things that would be good for you to that we talk about, or for you to watch on this video. Kind of big concept that you probably needs to kind of take away at the end of the day. Okay. So without further ado, we'll talk about chapter one. So this is for your first week, gonna be chapter one. And the big concept of this chapter, it has to do with the very first thing is what is abnormal? What is abnormal psychology? So when we talk about abnormal, then you really have to think about the how would you define normal in the first place? If you ask yourself, what is normal? Okay, is normal or the norm is the normal here in the U.S. the same as the norm in Middle Eastern country? Is it the same norm as the in South America? Is it the same norm in Africa? Even in the same country, is the norm here in Arizona would be the same norm in Texas or in Florida or in Seattle. So it really become you have to keep in mind that what is the norm, and then for you to be able to define that norm. And there are scientists and psychiatrists and psychologists kind of debate this term for years on end. But what they do agree on is that it kind of fall into these 4Ds, which is the big concept you do need to know for this week. Deviance, distress, dysfunction, and danger. Okay, kind of fall into these 4Ds. So deviance, different, extreme, unusual, perhaps even bizarre behaviors. Distress, unpleasant, upsetting to the person. Dysfunction, kind of going affecting their daily lives, and then danger with potential risk of harm. So really understand what each one would be. So deviance, what deviance is, this is what I was alluding to, is actually getting away from that social norm, getting away from the normalcy of your daily life. So whatever the social norm is. So let's say it is customary for some country that you stick your tongue out to each other. That could be the norm in Africa in one of the tribes. That's how they greet one another, is just sticking out the tongue. Okay, but if that's their norm, and let's say they were placed in our society, and then start sticking their tongue out in our society, then we may look at them that they are abnormal because they're not following the norm that we have here. They are following the norm that they actually have over there. So that's why a lot of times, um, that's why we have a multicultural class, to understand the norm of what other culture is like, what other people actually are doing in terms of other cultures. So deviance, you have to really kind of put things in perspective. If it's truly a problem in terms of outside of their norm where they grow up, as their culture pertain to their culture as well. Okay. The next one is distress. So anything that caused them to become distressed, caused them to have emotional, physical distress. Even the situation that's going on now, you could actually think about could become distress to a lot of people. With the pandemic and with the unrest in the country, that could be part of distress as well. Uh, which cause a lot of anxiety, depression, suicidal tendencies. Also, a lot of things kind of bring up with that distress. But this is the biggest one I want you to kind of pay attention on, which is this third D, is dysfunction. Dysfunction actually referring to anything that would interfere with your daily lives. Okay, interfere with your daily lives. When we talk about abnormal psychology, in order, as a counselor, when you diagnose someone, you have to keep this in mind. How is their behavior affect their daily lives? So let's say if you drink, let's say you drink a beer. Okay, um, if the beer that you drink become the things that you actually need for you to function. If you don't have the beer, let's say you come home every night, you grab a can of beer and you drink a can of beer. Some people say, well, that's not alcoholic. You only drink one can. You're not really buzzed, or you don't even really, become really drunk. Well, how would you define that one can of beer? Can you go without it? Do you feel like you have such a need to actually need to get that can of beer? Without it, you would completely mess up your life, completely change your life, could actually make you feel depressed, or could actually cause you to go into this, nasty mood. So if it's so, that means you're literally depending yourself on that alcoholism, that alcohol, that one can of beer. Therefore, that is a dysfunctional behavior. So it's literally interfering with your life. So if you feel that you drink, well, I don't need to drink today. I could have it. I could go without it. It wouldn't affect my mood. It wouldn't affect people around me. Then it's not a problem then. So you really have to keep the word functioning, how it actually affects their daily function in mind. So when you diagnose these people, let's say you could feel depressed, you could feel sad. Let's say you broke up with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, you could feel depressed, you could feel sad. But if the sadness, you don't let that sadness to affect your whole entire life, you still be able to go out and do things with your friends, or go out and still go to dinner with people, or still going to work. That would be fine. But if you actually couldn't even get out of bed, or couldn't even go to work, cry all the time because of the breakup, that's become dysfunctioning. It's actually affecting your life. So that's a huge key when you're actually diagnosing people. Keep that in mind. Keep that big key in mind. The last one is the danger, is how is your behavior could become dangerous to yourself. So this is a huge point as well. If any behavior that you do could actually make yourself injure yourself, or hurt other people, then those become problematic. That could become abnormal. Um, some people might view, what, I'm doing things to myself, and I'm not hurting anyone else. Why is that a bad thing? Because I'm just doing things to myself. Well, you are affecting your life, but you are also affecting other people's life, because there's someone out there that do care for you, that love you, your family member, your loved ones. And if something happened to you, you could actually affect their lives. So technically speaking, you are affecting your life, and also you are affecting other people's life as well. So, and this is the huge key to remember when you diagnose people. When we talk about deviance, sometimes you could be eccentric. You could be eccentric, and you could be completely deviant, not kind of conforming with the norms. But that doesn't really mean that you're actually crazy, or you have mentally ill, that you are mentally ill, or have mental illness. Because you are free to be creative. You're free to doesn't have to fit into this box in terms of the what the society considered the norm is. You can do that. You can consider it eccentric. Doesn't mean you actually consider to have any mental illness. Okay, that's the huge key that you should know for that. And in terms of treatment, we've been starting treatment long time ago, all the way from the past. And things like this one in the picture, you could see we poke holes in people's skull, thinking that we could relieve some stress or relieve the demons from the body. So all kinds of things, exorcism, which is interesting because some people truly believe in them and some do not. Uh, Personal experience, I had this happen back in, let's see, back in about 2000, 2002, at Banner Desert. I had a kid came in. He was completely gone. Actually, he was just using meth or spice, I believe meth, one time, and then he just left this planet, went somewhere else in his mind. Basically, he's talking gibberish. We don't know what he's saying. He's hitting walls, hitting himself, um, pacing his feces on the wall, all kinds of things. So couldn't even walk sometimes for some reason. He just refused to walk. He just become angry all the time. Couldn't even speak English for some reason. He couldn't even talk at all. And the psychiatrist trying to figure it out, trying to use different medication, do different things with him for almost a month. And nothing had really changed. And the family was this is a Hispanic family, so they asked the Catholic priest to come in one day, and after a month, after he was at Banner Desert for a month, and we had to take turn to watch him throughout the day, 24/7, for a month. And they asked the Catholic priest to come in and then go through the exorcism for some reason. That's what the family believes. And after a day or so, after the exorcism was done, uh, the kid actually was improved, almost like a miracle. He started to talk again. He started to walk normally again. He started to interact normally. Not 100%, but kind of was a slow improvement over the next week or so before we sent him home. Before he was well enough to send him home, but and the priest actually came back a couple of times. The priest came back a couple of times to do exorcism, and each time there seemed to be some improvement on those. But that was the only case I've seen improvement that I've since I actually practiced, since back in the days when I was doing counseling. So that was my experience with exorcism. So like I said, we had this way back in the olden days, even through middle age. We often think there's a bad spirit or evil spirit inside the person, so we do things to actually drive the bad spirit away by even sometimes hitting or beating up the person, thinking they have being possessed by demons and hearing voices and seeing things. So they beat the person out, thinking that by beating them they will stop their schizophrenia as a psychosis. So not until recently we actually become modernized the treatment, and the field of psychology and psychiatry is literally fairly new comparing to the medicine overall. Um, we the treatment even more brand new, like the medication. Most of our medication for mental illness started in 1960, so approximately 1960. For the most part, there are some older drugs, but then it was used for some other things, and we kind of use it for mental illness as well. And it's really nasty. There's a lot of nasty side effects. But for medication, truly, it literally started in about 1960s, 1970s. And we had asylum where we keep people back in the 1900s, early 1900s, to make sure that they're not mixed with the normal folks. You might want to actually look. Benjamin Rush, Dr. Rush, actually had he's a huge contributor to not just to psychiatry also, but to medicine overall. He actually had reformed medicine in our country. So if you like history buff, you want to look up stuff, this would be the one to look up. He actually did a lot of things in terms of medicine, changing medicine. So you could see here in terms of how we treat patients, in terms of keeping them at different place or different treatments throughout the time, throughout the more modern history of psychiatry. One of the more fascinating treatment is hypnotism. Um, Quite interesting because it literally kind of tap into your unconscious part of your mind. Literally have you talk about those unconscious part. Let's see. One of the big one that definitely, this is also another huge idea in terms of deinstitutionalization. Um, if you don't know, we used to have like an asylum, and in the 1980s or so, 1970s, 80s, we actually stopped closing all of the asylum places around the U.S. and then start putting things as an outpatient. If you work in a field right now, that's where you see most of the patients. Most of those people usually before they were kept in the hospitals, and now we don't want to keep them in hospital long term, so we let them out and we trying to give them places to live, and also assign them to like case manager and also clinics for them to go to, but doesn't work out too well for most of them. They oftentimes still going back to hospital quite a bit, and we're trying to drive that number down. So let's see. One of the things that you should look into, and this is the last thing I want to kind of talk about today, is the positive psychology. Positive psychology is one of the more brand new field that's kind of just popped up. Instead of focusing on all the negative stuff, all the sad things, we focus on the positive things instead. Huge field now in terms of psychology. There's a lot of implication that we use in terms of counseling, and also even life coaching. If you actually do life coach stuff, positive psychology is big on those. I actually include a video for this week, for the unit, for the week one, that you could watch about positive psychology. It's a little short video, but kind of sum up what they do in terms of positive psychology, and how they view things and look at things, and how they trying to help people from the positive view. Okay, I hope this kind of helped with the readings that you have. And if you want to talk more about any of these information or concept, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to actually sit down with you, or actually answer any of your questions regarding these ideas and concepts. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.